Finance meeting to order. Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the first topic of discussion, and that's the 2018 Bridge Program update. Mr. Stoner.
Okay, Commissioners, I want to give you an update today on the bridge program. You may or may not be aware, we do our inspections of our bridges every 2 years. We inspect some of them every year. And we take the results from those inspection reports, and then we do our capital improvement plan report. So that's the foundation of our report, how we put together priorities, funding scenarios and everything. So what we wanted to do is just give you a quick update from our last year's inspections, where we stand, look ahead, what's coming down the pipeline, but also what we've accomplished too. So just a quick overview. I was going to give a quiz on this, but I figured you guys are based in there, so I'm not wasting time. We have an inventory of 28 bridges. 19 are entirely owned by Cumberland County, 9 are shared by York County. Of those 9, 4 are Cumberland County's lead and maintaining. The question we often get, why do we own them? Historically, when you look at our bridges, you look how old they are. Historically, a lot of our municipalities could not afford to construct bridges. So they came to us, we bankrolled it, and at the time, I think we just continued to take ownership of them and never turned them back. So a lot of times I wonder, why do we own, of all the bridges in the county, why do we own 28 of them? That's the reason. So, a little fun fact. Some of the program goals. The first was really to replace our structurally deficient, functionally obsolete, and fracture critical bridges where appropriate. I'll talk a little bit later. There are some bridges that are fracture critical that are structurally deficient that we don't want to replace. They may have historic character that we're going to maintain in the future, so we don't want to replace some of those bridges. The second point there are representative examples of our county's historic bridges. So we have our last covered bridge. We have a stone arch bridge. We have a few steel truss bridges that we're all preserving moving ahead. So representative examples of a lot of the bridge infrastructure we have in the county. And the final piece is really through our inspection, our maintenance program, trying to keep all of our bridges in good working order. So they're really the goals of our CIP. The inspection process feeds that, as well as our funding plan. Program history. Before 2011, we were just using our liquid fuels money. That was about $330,000 a year. We weren't doing a whole lot. We did some maintenance. We replaced one bridge in that time frame. That was Gilbert Bridge in York County. Interesting part of that one, not sure how it happened, it was before me. That's a Cumberland-York County jointly owned bridge, but York County was the lead on it. For some reason, we took over responsibility for replacing it. After 2011 there is when we started really thinking ahead and brought a proposal to the board that some of you may recall. The board was going to put some general fund money into it over a series of years to help jumpstart the program. We had the first allotment there of $500,000. After that, I think we struggled a little bit. Some of the other financial pressures on the budget, we didn't get that $500K on a regular basis. Comes 2015, that's when we looked at the $5 registration fee. That was really the linchpin to our entire program. It was a sustainable funding source there that could really look at our maintenance and replacement. If you recall, this was our graph here where we're making the decision of a $5 fee. You look at our expenses. They're kind of up. You can see they're starting to go up here in 2019 and 2020. As you can see, the expenses are staying high. This was sort of revenue at that time, so we saw we really needed to do something. So this graph is from 2010, 2011 time frame as we were looking ahead with our CIP. But what are our funding sources? You can see the sources there again. The biggest one is the Act 89 registration fee, about $1.1 million a year. We've been trending ahead of that. Look at our actual totals have been coming in. We've seen more vehicles registered in the county. We also received, the Marcellus Shale, our continued liquid fuels funding, and then some other funding sources that were authorized by Act 89. The only general fund dollars that we put into the program is that initial $500,000 from the general fund. As we've discussed before, when we look at the different options with the bridge program, when we did the $5 registration fee, we made the point to indicate that if we were going to do that through a general fund tax increase, a 1% increase in general fund tax would be $530,000. So you're looking at about a 2% tax increase to get the same level of revenue that we did with the $5 registration fee. So one is across all of our property owners, the other ones to those that are registered vehicles, so more of a user fee. So that's some of the discussion we had several years ago on the program. So what have we done? So this is important, I think, when you look, a lot of times we get into some of our federal and state projects that take a long time. So the Coors, Wolf, Craighead, if you look, they take a long time. So some folks may say, well, are we getting anything done? Absolutely. And I think that the projects we're looking at here show that when we do projects locally, we get a lot done. So, the first one there is Green Lane Farms. That was a total rehabilitation of that bridge, rehab and repainting. Picture of the top left there. Enksmill Road Bridge was another one that took us about 12 to 18 months from concept that we're going to do it to construction and opening that we did locally. Bernheisel Bridge, the top left there, another one. That was a superstructure replacement job, again, 12 to 18 months. Eggy Bridge, bottom right, this is South Middleton Township. It's one of my personal favorites, one of the swimming holes for the Stoner family there under some of the piers. But we did a full rehab of that, and that was, rarely we get calls of people calling in to say, hey, good job. I've gotten a lot of calls on that from people that have gone by and said, you guys did a great job on this, it looks good. And that's what I do see on a regular basis. And you look at it, you take some pride in it. You look at it, it's an excellent job, and a lot of our residents are happy with it as well. Craighead Bridge, top left there, you're all familiar with that last year where we managed to save the old bridge and put the new one in place. So that's another one I think is very successful. And then Leidick Bridge, we did several years ago. Another one that we did on a quick time frame was really restricting access to our agricultural community in Monroe Township. So you can see through the history of the program of bridges that we've had, we've gotten a lot of progress. We also did with our partners in York County, Old Gettysburg Pike Bridge. It's in Upper Island Township. They led this one. This one cost us nothing. So it was kind of a partnership. They got some funding through their tip to make this one happen. But we can take credit for it as well because it does serve our residents. So there's some of our notable projects. Moving ahead, looking forward where we're headed, you're probably familiar with these. These are our four big ones right now that we're working on. Wolf Bridge, Coors Bridge, Cumberland, and Sample. Wolf Bridge, just had some questions on that yesterday. We're anticipating environmental clearance by the end of the month, which will allow us to move on the final design right away, utilities, and get us to construction next year. We had some issues with PennDOT on that, getting some different reviews in place. My understanding yesterday was that by the end of the month, we should have some of that. Forest Bridge, you're very familiar with that. We're trying to seal that one up and get that ready for construction next year as well. A few utility items still outstanding, working through those, but we're still headed to next year on that one. Kunkel Bridge, if you recall, in South Middleton Township, we received $2 million in state funds for that. That's kind of a reward for those counties that adopted the $5 registration fee. Moving that one forward with design should be ready for next year as well. And then Sample Bridge in Silver Spring Township, one of our more costly projects we're doing on our own. We're looking at 2020 for that. That's our replacement plan, so that they would be full replacements. Historic preservation, and these are bridges that we're not looking to replace, but rather repair and keep their historic character. Hurstville Bridge we'll do next year. That's a rehabilitation, as is Ramp Bridge, which is our last covered bridge in the county in Hopewell Township. And then we're working in partnership with our friends in York County, Slade Hill Road Bridge. We're looking at a rehabilitation on that. That's in 2020. We're still scoping out what some of the costs will be on that and exactly what all we're going to do with that. So we're hopeful we'll work with York County to nail down some more specifics on that one. That's our historic plan. Just a quick look at funding. So how are we funding all this? So here's a quick split on where all of our funds are coming from. When I say county funds, keep in mind that it's part of that. It's only $500,000 in general fund dollars. There are funds that are coming from that table that I showed you earlier. So you can see that we really have a pretty high leverage for the projects we're looking at now. We're getting a lot done. $33 million worth of projects, $500,000 worth of general fund dollars included in that. Looking ahead, we want to continue to find that leverage where we can. We recently found some extra money through Wolf's Bridge. It's going to be a 100% federal project now. Work with PennDOT to give us a little extra money on that based upon our efforts we've done on Bishop Bridge and the access road we're constructing down there. Our goals for the program, we have some performance measures for the program I want to keep a look at. So if you look down the left-hand side there, you can see the goal and then the performance measure and the goals in parentheses. So starting in 2009, you can see that we have made progress on all of our performance measures. I think that one of the key ones there, the structurally deficient bridges, we want to have in our inventory 5 bridges that are structurally deficient, which would represent our historic structures. We've gone from a high of 2018 and 2011 of 18 structurally deficient bridges to projected number of 10 next year. So we're making good progress on that. Looking ahead, our goal is 5 on that, but we have made substantial progress since we started our CIP back in 2011. Fracture critical bridges, these are some of our steel truss bridges that have elements that are really critical to the structure of the bridge, that if they're compromised, the safety and integrity of the bridge is challenged. We want to have 2 of those. We're down to 4, projecting in 2019. Closed bridges, we do have 1 bridge closed right now, Hertzler Bridge, but that's until we complete the repairs next year. Wolf. So there is an additional one there. Of 2017, that one is Wolf. We have another one there with Hertzler, so we have 2 that are closed right now. But moving ahead, it's our goal to have 9. Moving forward, I do want to call your attention, we've talked about this before. You can see all the work that we're doing in 2019 and 2020. There's likely going to be a gap funding need there to help us cash flow those projects. We're working with finance on that, on the best way to do that, the way to construct that, whether it be a PIP loan or if there's money in the reserve to do that. Looking at the different ways to look at that gap funding and where that would come from. We'll be bringing that back to you for your review and approval. We're also doing redundant bridge analyses on Cormac Bridge and Sheepford Bridge. These analyses really take a look at the bridge and try to figure out, are they needed in the future? Do we want to invest significant capital funds either into a repair, rehab, or replacement for a bridge that may not be needed in the future? So those 2 bridges we're taking a look at in conjunction with York County to figure out their status for the future. Longer term projects looking beyond 2020, Roush Bridge in Dickinson Township, Berkner Bridge in West Penn and North Grantham Road, even on Brown Township, all projects we're looking at potential replacements in the future. So there's some of the forward-looking projects we have. For the most up-to-date information, this is our Bridge Capital Improvement Plan story map that our friends in GIS helped us out with. So you go on here, you can see all the projects that we have active right now. The detour routes are posted on here, and there's also dates of whenever the projects are anticipated to be completed, and also funding information, how much they cost. So we try to keep this resource up to date on a regular basis so that our residents can see what's going on in the county and where we stand. So that's really all I had for you today. I know I went over a lot there quickly, but be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Kurt, what's driving the cost for Stanton Bridge? Is it mainly because there's no help from state or feds?
Right. I mean, that one's, we don't have any federal state funds for it, so it's entirely our cost. But it's a big bridge.
The total cost is higher. One, it's one of our longer bridges. It's going to be curved, and it's high. You're down there from Milfording, and then the retaining walls have to be much longer because of it's kind of hard to describe, but how steep the slope is there on the bank, how high we are, that retaining wall gets a lot longer. Those are programming level costs too that Kurt's put up there. We usually factor in about a 30% contingency factor, and generally we come in under these. And so for planning purposes, we want to have that contingency in it. But it's one of the more complicated. That and Norris Bridge are probably the 2 toughest in the county.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again, I think that since we enacted the $5 vehicle registration fee, that has enabled us to really move aggressively in dealing with our structurally deficient county-owned bridges and trying to bring them up to date. The one thing you didn't cover in this is that we also got an additional $500,000 from the state as a result of our implementation of that $5 vehicle registration fee, kind of like a supplemental, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have that anywhere in the PowerPoint?
Yeah, actually, that was actually $2 million, Jim.
All right.
That was for
what did I say, 500,000?
Yeah, that was for Kunkel Bridge.
You're right.
Yeah.
All right, so I was off on the number, big time. That was a nice supplement that we received as a result of our collective action to move forward aggressively and try to deal with the structurally deficient bridges in our county. And that, as we know, the $5 vehicle registration fee can't be used for anything other than road and bridge infrastructure. So It doesn't go into our general fund and, is used for all kinds of other things. It's specifically designated for that. But I wanted to ask, the map, I hope that this is conspicuously located somewhere on our website, because I did receive a question just the other day from a constituent relative to what's going on with the Wolf Bridge. They wanted to know what's going on with the Wolf Bridge. And I'm constantly asked as to when is the Oars Bridge going to be completed. So I think keeping our public informed and having this conspicuous location on our website is important. I would suggest maybe that excellent presentations always occur. But it'd be nice to, they can make this PowerPoint available on their website as well. So, nice job.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is 2017 County Growth Training.
All right. Do you have the handout for that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go. I think just go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you got the handout for that.
Yeah.
You're right, thank you.
We put out a growth trends report, part of our annual report, and that document, I'll go over, just highlight some of the, I won't go over the entire thing, just highlight some of the portions of that. If you go to page 2 of the report, it lists the plans, the final plan submissions, and what we do for growth tracking. What do you got?
I got it now.
Okay. All right.
It's staple on together.
Yeah, we do the growth trends basically by plan submissions and by the building permit survey we do every year. So those are the two methods we use to track the growth in the county. And on that page 2 is the plan submissions portion of it. And it lists there probably our growth leaders for 2017 for last year. And the top 5 there are listed to the left are the residential growth leaders. And then to the right on that table are the growth leaders for commercial and industrial units. And these are just plan submissions, and these are for final plans. We did not count preliminary, so they're just final plans. And you can see, if you look at the residential, just point out, Upper Allen Township and Lower Allen Township are our top 2. And then you can see as we go down through Hampton, South Middleton, and Silver Spring, Upper Allen, Lower Allen have been our top 2 for the last 3 years. That's a little difference from 5 to 10 years ago, where Silver Spring was probably our top residential. And you can see Silver Spring is still in the top 5, but it has slipped down, and Upper Allen seems to have taken over that lead. There are several large developments being proposed in Upper Allen Township in phases, and that's what I think is occurring there. But if you look at the bottom of that table there, the list there, it says the total growth leaders is 1,248 units. That's just adding up those 5. And then the total for the county is 1,500. So that just those 5 municipalities have contributed about 82% of the dwelling units proposed in the county. So you can see where the growth is occurring. And those, if you notice, are all in the eastern part of the county. South Middleton, Carlisle, and East. If you go to, I just want to point out to number 3 there under the table, most of the units being proposed are townhouse or multifamily. About 75% townhouse and multifamily. This is the same as last year, or in 2016 it was 75% also. In 2015 it was 71%. So we're seeing that same amount, generally in the 70% range of multifamily units being proposed, as opposed to single family, which was probably our most 5 or 10 years ago, was more single family.
So more higher densities.
And higher densities.
Are we finding that's reflected in the demand for the units, or is that more driven by what the townships are zoning for?
We, in our comp plan, we did find out in doing the comp plan that there is a demand for that type of unit. So I think that's part of it right there, is the demand for that type of unit.
And part of it too, Gary, is convincing our municipalities or letting them know there's demand for this, and that not every multifamily unit is perceived to be low income. Sometimes there's a stigma that if it's a rental unit, that for some reason it's low income or not desirable. There are a lot of very desirable multifamily units out there across the entire spectrum, low income to higher income that are out there. And having our municipalities understand that and understand why there is a demand for those types of units.
Yeah, on the right side of that table is the commercial industrial units being proposed. Silver Spring Township is on the top. They've been in the top 3 for the last 5 years. So even though they're maybe generating less residential units, they are still top in commercial and industrial units being proposed in Silver Spring. And again, if you look at the bottom there of that table for the commercial industrial, 22 out of 40 total for the county. So about 55% of it is within those 5 municipalities. And again, you notice they're all in the eastern part of the county. It's where the development is generated. Really, growth leaders are all in the east.
Oh, there you go, Jeff. You want to?
Oh,
you got it.
okay. All right, we go on. Go on to the next. Let's go to page 4. Can I do this?
Yeah.
At the bottom of the page 4 there is a residential building permit. I'm sorry. And this is, I'll get into the building permit trends now. And if you notice there, the top 5 are the same municipalities we saw in the proposed units on the last table. Basically all the same. The only difference is that Carlisle Borough now is in there. Down there at the bottom, proposed, which I think is sort of unusual in that you have a borough as one of the top 5 municipalities that are developing residences. Makes the top 5. And I think about a lot of that is the redevelopment in Carlisle going on in those brownfields. It's occurring. If you look below there, the total, they are 72% of the residential permits are within those 5 municipalities. The county as a whole. Then if you go to the right, it's kind of interesting too. You go to the right, this is the commercial industrial permits that are being proposed. And right off the top, you can see Carlisle just jumps out there, 34, much higher than anyone else. I actually called Carlisle to see if there's a mistake there in that. And they said, no, those are all new businesses being developed. And what is happening is I think a lot of them are going into existing buildings and a lot of redevelopment is occurring. So what that shows is Carlisle Borough has a high residential development and a high commercial development. So there's a lot of activity occurring within Carlisle Borough in the last year or 2. And then you can see the bottom there, the growth of both of them. And again, it's about 83% of the commercial industrial proposals are coming in just those 5 municipalities in the county over the last year. And again, like I said, they're all in the east. Okay, if we were to go to the next page, page 5, at the bottom of the page is just the trend, the 11-year trend. Yeah, just one page. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. At the bottom of that page. And I think you're all familiar that number 1, of course, Cumberland County has the fastest growth rate in the state right now as far as population growth. Within that 2010 to 2017 timeframe, Silver Spring has been the lead municipality in the state, and for the highest population growth. It also was the highest in the amount of building permits being issued during that time frame. And then number 3, I thought was really interesting in that if you look at the municipal ranking by number of building permits being issued, is basically the same. It reflects what the population growth is for each of the municipalities. Silver Spring Township issued the most building permits for residences. It also was the highest population growth. Hampton was second, was the second most population growth. Right on down the line, until you get down the bottom, South Middleton Township had the 5th highest issue of building permits. East Pennsboro had the 5th highest population growth in the county. South Middleton actually had the 6th highest population growth in the county. So it does reflect it pretty well. The municipalities are issuing permits where the population is occurring. Okay. And the last thing I just wanted to show you is the actual, if you go to page 7, these are the graphs that compare the plans we received with the permits issued. And I know I showed this last year, and just to show you the difference between the two, up there at the far left, 2007, it's before the residential recession occurred. And you can see it's pretty high. The blue line, by the way, I should point that out. The blue line is proposed. The red line is the number of permits issued. So the blue line, again, up left side there, very high in 2007, and then when the recession hit in 2008, it dropped. And you can see the building permits dropped with it. And it pretty much then, the amount of proposed dwellings was below the permits being issued for up until 2014. And so what was going on basically is we're living in the pipeline there of those plans that were submitted before the recession. And so phases going on continued to occur. And then in 2015, first time it reached above, the number of proposed units went above what was being actually permitted. So we saw, and then last year in 2016, I mean, we saw that peak that went up there with proposed units, over 2,000 proposed units in 1 year. And then this last year, 2017, we saw a drop down. It dropped about 30% decrease from what it was before. Looking at that to see why that happened, I'm thinking, and I looked at the plans that were submitted in 2016 here, and what happened is, if you looked under that number 2, there were a lot of several large phased developments that were submitted at that time. It took a long time to develop and process through, and they all seem to be submitted around that time, around 2016, and that shows. So I'm thinking this is an anomaly in the graph, that spike there. And what you're seeing now is sort of a fluctuation going down a little bit. It's still above what was before the recession.
Yeah, I mean, even if you throw that 1 year out as an outlier, connecting the remaining dots, the
Right
15
here.
to 17, throw that out, go the year before,
Okay.
from 15
Yeah.
to
and then
17, that's still phenomenal.
It's still an increase, right? So that's why I'm thinking this may be just a fluctuation in it, and then this could be continuing or level off here. So we'll see what happens with that, but we're still doing pretty well as far as proposed units. That's generally where I'd like to see it, where there's a little bit more proposed being out there than permits being issued, so you have that.
That red line though,
That
should
background.
start tilting up.
Is it gonna start going up?
I think it would, don't you think, because of all the proposed numbers represent the
Uh-huh.
final plan submission, even though I know some of them that never get off the ground, even though they've been
Right.
approved. My guess is you're gonna see that red line go up.
That's my guess is
Catch
too.
up.
This should start going up.
Correlate to the.
Yeah.
Eventually it will.
That's what I would guess, yeah, exactly. You're gonna see more, because of what's going on here.
Right.
This right here is going to, maybe within the next year or two, they're gonna come out here, that red line is gonna start going up. If all those go through the process, yeah. Then the last one there, make sure I hit all points there. Again, the highest municipalities that issued the most are pretty much the same: Upper Island, Silver Spring, Hampton, Lower Island, South Middleton, which you'll all seen before. Over that 10-year period, they're still being the leaders there. The last graph, that's what I'm showing you there, is the commercial and industrial comparison. And what we've seen here, this is a little bit harder to, I think, follow than the other one, in that the blue line is the proposals that have come through. The red line is what's been issued as far as permits are concerned. But you saw it pretty much parallel each other here until you got to around 2012, 2013. We had the amount of permits that are being issued that are much greater. I don't say much, but they're greater than what the proposals are. And what that's showing, I believe, is that there's a lot more redevelopment occurring. Redevelopment plans do not require, if you're going to build or start a new business within an existing building, you don't need to submit a land development plan. So we're not seeing the proposals coming in for land development plan, but we are seeing the permits being issued for that. A lot of those, like I said, are Carlisle and Mechanicsburg. We've seen a lot of those commercial industrial permits being issued in there, and not many plans being submitted for them. And as you see, they're pretty much following their very consistent, I guess you could say, as far as both of them. Maybe a slight downturn here within the last year, but I think might be just a minor fluctuation. I compared where we are this year to where we were last year at this time. We're almost exactly the same. We had 29 proposed commercial industrial last year at this time. This year we have 28. So we're in the same exact ballpark. I think it's going to be consistent as we go on through the rest of the year. One thing I just want to point out is, of those, there's one change here along the bottom here. The last number 6, 79% of the commercial industrial permits and 72 of the proposals are occurring in the same 8 municipalities, sort of spread out. All those municipalities are similar to what we've seen previous, except one. That's Southampton Township in the west. Southampton, that's the only western township we've seen that has maintained a higher, I guess, amount of permits and proposals than any of the other western municipalities. And I think that is because they're right off the interchange of 81, right outside of Shippensburg. It's encouraged for that kind of development to occur there.
They're also a much lower baseline, so a small move will
Yeah.
be bang for multiple.
Yeah. So that's really all I had. Are there any other questions?
I have one. This is great. Thank you for this. And it's useful to see it. It gives us a good profile of the growth pattern based on plans and permits. But what's missing is population. And I know you guys get some regular population numbers. If you could send those our way on occasion, wherever. I guess you use census.
Estimates that come in.
Yeah, and as much breakdown as you can. I'll tell you why. I've been beating this drum for a little while, but we're all going through this space allocation process again. And I would like to see us make a more concerted effort to maybe get some forward-looking population projections that might help us do a little forecasting on staffing in certain areas, especially the human services areas, so we can get an idea of maybe 5 years out, 10 years out, what our caseloads might be in areas like mental health and drug and alcohol and things. So if you can supply us with any numbers, we'll start doing some survey work on that if everyone's amenable.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, we have those out to 2040, actually, for the population.
That's what we've used in our comprehensive plan too. We were provided to see it. Latest population update came out just a couple weeks ago. 2017, our estimated population was just over 250,000, so we cracked a 250,000 mark.
Thank you, guys. Is there any other business we need to discuss? Brian, do you have any questions? Thanks for coming out today.
Can you make sure Ryan gets a copy of this?
That's, I was actually gonna ask if you could get copies of the presentations.
Can I get a Melissa?
You have it?
There's nothing else, there's a motion to adjourn.
There you go.
Adjourn, thank you.
You're welcome.